keep it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Calling this meeting to order at 7 p.m. on December 28th, 2018. Kathy, if you would, please call the roll.
Kathleen Abbott-Zizzi.
Here.
Brian Boyle.
Here.
Vincent Cipriano.
Here.
Lee Judy. Kimberly Farah.
Here.
Sheila Lilly.
Here.
Sarah Markham.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Peyton Cornell.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
Present.
Susan Sherman.
Here.
Jennifer Silva.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
Karen DeSenza.
Here.
Also seated with the board this evening are the superintendent of schools, Dr. O. Metzler, and the principal business administrator, Mr. James.
Mr. Dowd, if you would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Dowd, you may begin your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, SAU55 board members. I believe you'll have a copy of the proposed draft budget for SAU55. This is a budget that totals $2,172,471. This is a reduction from the previously discussed budget, and the reduction of about $73,469, which is disclosed on the last page of the packet. At the very back, you'll see where some of the changes are compared to what we've had previously. I'll walk you through some of those changes. A reduced audit, approximately $2,000 based on trend. Technology services, $6,800, with the idea of reducing some technology to offset cost increases. Contracted services, which is the $23,9452, reduce $12,000 based on trend. Industry travel, $5,000 based on trend. Employee insurance, decrease $48,000 to reflect trend. And other employee benefits, decrease $5,000. So we went through the budget, I believe, previously, and I don't know if there are any specific questions from that meeting. You'll see that the budget represents a level budget with prior year.
Okay?
Point of order.
Yes.
I would like to motion to move to weighted voting for the evening. I am requesting the chair to poll the Timberlane board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the Timberlane Board. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Okay. Are there questions related to the budget that Mr. Dowd has put before us?
I'm sorry, can I do a point of order just for the recording secretaries? Because there are only 8 Timberlane members here this evening, the votes are distributed such that the voting will be 27.375 per Timberlane member, and there was an error last time. The Hampstead members should be getting 16.6 votes per person.
That's what I have.
Okay, well, the minutes reflect
And I have
16.3.
27.38 for Timberlane.
Okay,
I recalculated those and had that chart made so that Mrs. Belcher would have accurate information.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dowd? These, no questions for Mr. Dowd. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the proposed budget.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion? Oh, sorry, the second was Mrs. Sherman. Dr. Fair.
I would like to, the motion was to approve, what was the motion? Could you read? To approve the miss. I would like to amend the motion.
Okay.
I would like to reduce the budget by removing the new support position of $35,000. Decreasing the additional lump sum of merit pool, extra hours, contract incentives, service recognition, and stipend by $15,847.
For the benefit of the members, do you know what line that is?
I don't know. It doesn't have a line. We do not have any detail on this. $15,847. And I would like to decrease line 2320, 580 by $10,000.
580, Kim? 580, okay.
For a reduction of $60,847.
800 and
47.
2390, is that what you said? 2320.
Kathy, I just want to make sure that you got all of that.
I believe I got 35,000 for the new position, 15,847 as part of the 1920 information. That's what you talked about, right?
Correct, yep.
There, as well as 10,000 from 2320, 581. There's a total reduction of 60,847.
Correct.
Is there a second on the motion to amend?
I'll second.
Mr. O'Neill, second. Discussion on the amendment.
Could I
Mrs. Sherman.
ask Dr. Farah's reasoning why reducing that's the conference and travel line, correct? The 580, why you would put it down to 10,000 when historically we've budgeted along at about 19,000 for the last, I don't know, two or three years. What was your thinking there?
My thinking was I reviewed all the conference and travel expenditures that are allowed throughout the Timberlane Regional School District, counted up how many people those are spread over, looked at the fact that typically teachers don't travel, principals do, so on and so forth, and calculated that this was a more appropriate value for this SAU.
All right, can I respond?
Yep, go ahead, Dr. Metzler.
What we've done with the 232580 line, that has, money was in the 2390-270 line in terms of what we need to do for recertification. So if you reduce that, you're going to need to increase 2390-270, because I can guarantee you that courses will be taken by people that are using conferences for recertification, and those are contractual obligations in each of the contracts the administrators have at the SAU. Most of us, several of us have doctorates, so they'd be at the doctorate level, and Dr. Farah, I'm sure you realize how expensive those courses are, and we'd spend well over $5,000 on that line. So we've done it, we've used the conferences, it's a much less expensive way to recertify, and actually to keep up to date with the things that we need to keep up to date with. For instance, recently I went to one in Boston about speech pathologists and language-based classrooms and those sorts of things. That would have been, and it wasn't a lot of money, it would have been a lot more money to take courses to get up to speed. Some of the areas that you've asked us to reorganize, we've shifted some responsibilities. Some of those responsibilities are falling on myself, Dr. Wilson, other people here, that we need to know more in different areas to support administrators that we no longer have in the buildings in those particular areas, special ed especially. So that literally, that 10,000 will be spent 3 times over probably in the course line. So that's just one area.
Just for my edification, what you're talking about is that at conferences, oftentimes the sessions that you go to do count as continuing education credits and count towards that recertification process. Is that what you're talking about? Is that going to the conference, you're able to go to those courses, those are then counted towards continuing education?
Correct, and it's a much less expensive way to recertify, which we're obligated to do through the Department of Education. We use TeachPoint to track those hours.
Right.
And mine are tracked by the commissioner, but everybody else's is basically, I approve the rest of them here. And then the commissioner has to approve mine.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dr. Farah.
You mentioned line 2392.
No, I'm sorry, 2390-270, it's the one right below it. It's course reimbursement. We're permitted to take 3 doctorate level courses per year by contract. So that's why it's just not it's not the right place to reduce the budget. It's just not. It's not. But
It is a bottom line budget, is it not, Mr. Cipriano?
It is. Mrs. McNamara.
Yes, I'd just like to better understand the impact of removing the salary for the administrative assistant on the HR is on the office.
no, that's a great question. I've discussed this at great length, and I know we have Hampstead business and we have Timberlane business, and sometimes it's SAU business, and I know I'm always the one to say, hey, you can't touch, that's SAU business, you shouldn't be discussing that. But we did have a business consultant that we knew that we were going to be getting some recommendations about our business office. We knew we were going to be getting some
Point of order. Timberlane had that consultant, I don't think it's pertinent for this discussion.
Well, let me ask, Dr. Metzler, did the consultant make recommendations that impact SAU55, or were they solely recommendations for Timberlane?
Those are recommendations that would impact the SAU.
Okay, you can continue.
Thank you.
Point of
So-
order. Timberlane paid for that consultant, regardless of what came out of that consultant, Mr. Cipriano. It was our expense. If the SAU would like to hear it, I would like to make a motion that the SAU reimburse Timberlane for the expense of the consultant. Do
In
I hear
fact,
a
I'll
second?
actually make that motion.
Yeah, we got a motion on
We
the
have a
floor.
motion
And
on
actually an
the floor
amendment
right
on the
now.
floor.
So we have an
Then
amendment.
I
we're
will-
discussing.
I won't
make
make
a
references,
motion.
I won't make references to the business consultant. So prior to the Timberlane hiring a business consultant, there was some discussion about additional help that was going to be needed in our business office. And so that was a position that was funded last year by the SAU, purposely left open so that this particular board would have some flexibility in the event that we needed to reorganize and additional services needed to shift. If you remember correctly, that was going to be someone that was going to support Kathy with the right to know kind of, and some of the other things that we do. But I think, again, I understand the reduction, but that's why that position was in there, actually to your question. And that's why it wasn't filled. And we also had a second position that I didn't fill. We had a retirement.
Right.
Because I wanted to provide you some flexibility. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest, I expected these conversations to take place in October, not on December 28th. But we just never got there. We just never got there. So my apologies.
Okay. Any additional discussion? This is again on the amendment, on the motion to amend. Seeing no, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just have a question. The $35,000 for the additional employee, there is something in the SAU audit regarding basically checks and balances within the SAU Business Administration Office. Would that mean that we wouldn't be able to be in compliance with the recommendations in the audit if we didn't have that position?
Well, it's a good question in terms of compliance, and if I may.
Please.
You know, I certainly could have gone and hired somebody and tried, you know, my intention was from day one was to have the discussion with this board, and this board to help drive what that was going to look like. And you know, I thought it would be something that would probably service Timberlane more so than Hampstead from the SAU perspective. We service both districts, we try to do the best we can. But, you know, obviously, one district requires more work than the other district, only because of the size. And we're going to have to do what we need to do to make things work. But this was really the reason why those positions were left open and why they're in the budget now. And I didn't use them. My hope was to combine and actually be able to provide the support to address the audit and any recommendations that I may have made to you or you may make to me, or reorganization, or if they came from, outside source that was trying to help us.
Okay. Yep, Ms. Silva.
So at one point, the Timberlane Board was told that the issues were primarily Timberlane issues. And I think any resolutions or any efforts that need to be made to work to fixing that, I think, are more a Timberlane issue that we should discuss at our own board.
Can I?
Yes.
It's a good
Go ahead.
point, and I don't disagree with Ms. Silva. You know, I think that's where, but remember, I told you that split's probably like 90-10. That person would do a very little bit of work for Hampstead as well as an SAU position, but it was primarily going to be something that was going to help with the Timberlane side of the docket.
Okay. Mr. Boyle, you had something.
Yes, I want to speak in favor of Dr. Farah's motion overall, but I guess I want to clarify that the SAU budget is I believe, a bottom line budget, and were we underexpended this year by, how much were we underexpended this year?
Can I? Then, Mr. Boyle, I know there was, and Mr. Dowd can research that for you. What we've tried to do, and I understand the bottom line budget, and I know we agree on that. You know, there's a number, and that's what you have for expenses to run the place, and you figure it. But we really do stay within these lines. We really don't go outside these lines. I mean, if you follow the trends, we haven't overspent the conference line. We've stayed under that. And when they go over, you know, those are things that I know Mr. Dow would update you as we move forward. But you know, if that's the will of the board, where you move money to make the lines work, well, then that's the way it goes.
I just that I want, I just want to, obviously, whatever makes the most sense to honor our contractual relationships, to people maintain their certifications. The money in the overall in the SAU budget. So if all of a sudden you had to move some money, and it doesn't look like this, it looks like this budget, if you had to move $5,000 or $10,000 to maintain, it looks, based on past experience, looks like you have it.
You're right, that's not a heavy lift, provided this board's comfortable with moving money within the lines to run the operation. My concern was, again, the conference was a much more efficient, inexpensive way for people to stay recertified rather than having to go to universities and take doctorate-level courses.
Makes sense.
Ms. Lowe's, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Sherman.
To answer Brian's question, I believe the unassigned fund balance ending for June 30th, 17 was $128,094.
You should let Mr. Dowd answer that question.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
2017?
June 17 or June 18?
Well, this is 17, but I'm
That's
looking at
the-
what we got for,
Are you looking at the audit from the
You're
previous
looking
year?
at
I'm looking at the audit from the previous year, never mind.
Yeah, I want the current one, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Sherman.
I'm okay with reducing the salary for the extra personnel and the benefits, but I'm just, when we lump it together and we make an amendment to lower the budget, I think we're trying to direct the SAU that that's where we would want the cuts from. That's where we would want the reduction from. And I'm not in favor of reducing the conference and travel and course reimbursement lines so that our people can't fulfill their contractual obligations to be recertified. So when we lump it together like that, I think that's what we're trying to do, is give you the message that that's where we want the cuts from. So I'm not in favor of reducing the course reimbursement line.
Okay. Oh, hold on, Dr. Metzler. Dr. Farrar.
We did not reduce the course reimbursement line. We reduced the conference and travel expense
Excuse me,
line.
conference and travel line.
And to answer the question, Mr. Boyle, the SAU was under budget by $61,884 last year. If this, which I think I received from Mr. Dowd, is the actuals versus the expended. So if, Sue, to your point, I'm not dictating I'm not trying to, I'm reducing the budget by what I feel is an adequate amount. And again, it is a bottom line budget. I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to conferences. I would certainly hope they go to conferences. But I just feel that's it's a place that can be reduced. If you want me to go to a different line that was under expended, I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. O'Neill.
This budget reflects, 2.2 million roughly. We had a $1.2 million budget when Dr. Metzler came into the SAU, I believe. That's almost about a 50% increase in cost, and is not reflective of a normal trend line that we would see in our expenditures as a district. Especially when, during that time frame, Timberlane has probably been reduced 800 to 900 students in its population base. I think these cuts are very reasonable and sound.
Go ahead, Dr. Metzler.
No, Mr. O'Neill's probably not aware of this, but several things happened during my time since I've been here. One, we've had several audits where they dictated exactly what was not in this budget that should be in this budget. They're called unfunded liabilities. Those are now in this budget. They were never in this budget when I got here.
Not fully.
So what was happening at the end of the year, before I got here, they were going back to Timberlane and Hampstead and taking money out of your budgets to pay for things that they didn't budget for here correctly. That's why it wasn't budgeted correctly. So this is not a 50% increase since I got here, Mr. O'Neill. That's completely disingenuous and not accurate. Right? The number has gone up,
Okay.
and I just told you how it went up. In addition to the fact that we also didn't fund for health correctly and some other things. And when the budget was pulled out and made a standalone budget, thank you, Mrs. Green, it went up a couple $100,000. That was all her. A default budget was created that had to be done correctly. So I didn't drive this budget up 50%, Mr. O'Neill.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thanks for your concerns.
Just to amplify a couple of things, because the board has discussed on a couple of occasions the unfunded liabilities, including the liability for retirement, the payouts that occur when employees leave the district, leave the SAU. And that came about, to Dr. Metzler's point, that came about as a result of a previous audit. where they identified that as a gap. And so we set about to fund that, and that went from zero to a significant amount of money based on the likelihood of retirement and the benefits that would need to be paid out when the employee left. I saw a hand over here.
Yes. All right, so one of the recommendations, I believe, was to take $15,847 out of other employee benefits. Now, I just need some clarification here. The other employee benefits line is that unfunded liability of retirement, correct? Whereas the employee retirement line is actually our obligated contribution.
I don't believe, and Dr. Farah, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that that's where she's talking. I think
That's correct. That's not where I'm
Where,
speaking about.
where are you speaking
It's
about?
coming out of the salary line.
Merit pool, extra hours, the contracts, incentives, the service recognition, and the stipend.
It's coming out of the salary line, which I don't have any line item number for.
Or out of the salary, but that, yeah, it's out of the whole salary line. That's broken out on this sheet that says the 18-19 SAU salaries. I was
Again,
assuming
I
you were
don't
taking it out
have-
of the bottom.
I don't have the number.
No, I know you don't have
can't
a
refer
line
to my
item. You just took it out of that bottom 395,
Correct.
659.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, now, if I may, just on the other employee benefits line, we're still not funding that fully. That's still only at 59%,
It's
a little bit.
probably, it could be less than 50%. I have to go on, but the best numbers that I have going into the subsequent year. So when we call that unfunded, well, it's now more funded, not fully funded, but we also don't anticipate 100% staff turnover in a given year.
Right.
So we fund it at a level that is more comfortable than where we had been not funding it at all. So that if someone does leave, we have enough to cover whatever is owed to that employee, although if everyone left, we probably wouldn't have enough to cover. It's not everything, it's a lot of, it's maybe less than half, but we hedged it. That was an audit recommendation, I believe, a number of years ago.
Yep.
If-
Go ahead, and then I'll get to you.
Just quick, I'm sorry, Sheila. And if more than one employee administrator were to leave, you wouldn't have enough money in that line to pay the post-employment benefits, just to be clear.
Okay. Ms. Lewis.
We haven't received any retirements, correct?
Not as of today,
Thank you.
from the SAU.
Correct.
Yep, Mr. Dowd.
And if I may, Mr. O'Neill, actually, one of the things that had happened under the previous business administrator is we're constantly taking a look to make sure that whatever is sort of originating, if you will, with Timberlane District, if it's an SAU expense, that expense is pushed up to the SAU so that it can be allocated more equitably out to Timberlane and Hampstead. So perhaps our courier or mail courier, some of our systems, those lines have probably gone up significantly over the last number of years due to the fact that we've done a better job making sure that those expenses are captured at the SAU level and allocated out so that Timberlane is not paying more than it should.
Can I just simplify something?
Go ahead,
Dr. Farah, correct, check my numbers, right? So you have $50,847 that you're looking to take out of the salary line.
Correct.
Got it. And then the other, and 10 for a total of 6847?
60.
Because the other was just
60,
Yes,
60.
60.
60.
6847.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
The other 10 was from the 2320 line, 580. And that was all salary line, because I think that confused some people where it was, I knew where you were taking it, but I don't think everybody else knew you were taking it.
Any other?
One other last piece of information for clarification. The year ending 2016, 2017 is where you said that there was a $60,000 retention balance, is that what you said?
2017-18.
2017-18. So, as far as where that money is from, wouldn't it be logical to think that it was from other employee benefits, from not everybody retiring?
It would be logical, a portion of it is from unfunded or positions, right? I mean, you could,
Actually, it would be an incorrect assertion because in 17-18, that line was over by about $55,000.
the salary line?
No, the
Oh.
other employee
Other
benefits.
employee benefits. Yeah.
That was not where there was an underage in 2017-18. So that's an incorrect assertion.
If you-
So we budgeted, in 2017-18, we budgeted $114,678. Our actual spent was $47,000. That means that there was $60,000 left over, and it was because of people not retiring
Correct.
that we had that. So basically, we have been budgeting appropriately at the SAU level for the expenditures, being that we still have an underfunded liability.
Correct, yep. And I believe that number was, or would be overspent if we had a retirement, or several retirements. So we may have been over in a year that we did have some retirements. It just shows that there's a little bit, it's not full, it's at least something.
Okay, Ms. Lowe's, and then I'll get to Mr. O'Neill.
But also the employee insurance was underspent by 50,000.
Right, well, we don't know what the insurance rate is actually gonna be when we're doing the budget, because we're
No,
planning so
I
far ahead.
understand that,
So
but
we
I'm
have to
just
go by the
saying that
guaranteed maximum.
that's
So
another
if the insurance
50,000.
comes in, I mean, we have to have enough money to pay the insurance for the employees.
Of course.
We have to have enough money to pay for retirements, should we receive any.
Okay. Mr. O'Neill, and then I'll come back to you, Dr.
Okay, so in 17 and 18, the actual spent was probably about $120,000 less than what we had budgeted for. Mr. Dow, what happens to that $120,000 that's unexpended in that
Mr.
given year?
Fund, some,
You're talking about the 16-17 year or
It's
the
actually
17-18?
Master Dow, actually.
Yeah,
So
okay.
could you answer the question,
I was
please?
asking what year he's talking about, 'cause it's the wrong year.
which year, in the current year?
17 or 18?
Yeah.
It wasn't
Roughly
$120.
$120,000 that was,
The wrong
Okay,
number. That's
okay.
16-17. That's why I was asking.
All right,
That's in the audit of 17.
okay.
it's on
looking at
here
the
on the
wrong number.
paper as
That's from
17.
So that's the
61.
year that just finished.
We just got done clarifying that minutes ago.
Okay, so use that year and the subsequent year. All the funds that are budgeted that are not expended, what happens to those funds?
So 25 is budgeted as relief for the next year for the assessment out to the district, the allocation out to the districts. And the remainder would go to fund balance.
So then the funds for that would then be used to reduce this, with the budget that we allocate, that we approve, and then that would be, how would this work?
So you can see, I believe, on
We approve budget X, whatever that happens to be,
page 3 of 3.
okay?
The beginning fund balance, I believe you're referring to?
That's correct, yeah. So you can see the total, if you go to the budget at 18-19, for example, you'll see the total for that year is $2,172,471. District support is $2,147,469, because $25,000 of that fund balance is used to reduce the assessment.
So we have, from the previous, going back on there, we have roughly, from total expenses that we paid and budgeted, it's roughly about 30 grand. And then the previous year before that would be roughly $125,000. And we're just moving forward $25,000.
Correct.
So we are accumulating more money in that unreserved fund balance that's, for all intents and purposes, off the books.
It's on the books. It's in your
Well, it's in the books, but it's not part of this. We should, in essence, if there is money that people have talked about here for relative to these retirements, there are funds in there that you can tap for unexpected retirements. So to come out here and to say that we don't have access to those funds,
Oh, we're still not 100% funded, though, even with our fund balance.
but no actuary is ever going to assume 100% of retirements in a given year.
No, but as we're able to build up that fund balance, then we're able to get a lot closer to being able to have that reserve.
And what is that dollar amount that we would be fully supported?
Well, it varies, but I would say at the end of the year, it's probably about 278,000.
278,000,
Would
But
fully
that-
fund it?
fully
Sorry?
funded. And what do we have in there roughly now?
I believe Mrs. Lowe's just touched upon that.
And this would be a rolling sort of account that it would keep on building
Building.
up and moving up and down according to,
Yeah, but as we go along, we're also increasing that by another year.
Right.
So I'm estimating based on the year we just closed to project forward what that would be, a reasonable estimate. So we would still have a year of additional benefit in there that I'm not accounting for here fully. So you look at 128 that we would have as an unassigned fund balance.
Plus
So
another
17.
41,000. Because you had 66 left last year and we rolled 25 forward, would that
Correct.
be?
Yeah.
Plus another 41, so we're up to 168,094 in the unreserved fund balance.
So that's a little more than half what you need, right?
This was the recommendation, try and build it up so that you're covered.
So-
That
Previously,
is even much better than the New Hampshire retirement system.
well, we're a lot smaller. I think that's the problem. We
Yeah.
don't have a very big pool. You can hedge in a bigger district. You can say, well,
I
know
do
I'm not.
understand that, but it's a bigger exposure at the New Hampshire retirement system is less funded.
Well, not to worry. Our New Hampshire retirement system liabilities get rolled into our financials as well. So, but we do cover. We have
That
both.
is illustration purposes.
Exactly, and I think what you're touching upon, the funds aren't available. I think previously, where we didn't have that fund balance, where we didn't have, and we weren't budgeting for it every year, then you'd be going out, reaching out to the districts and saying, hey, we have a retirement, we have something that we can't afford to cover. And that was previous to doing our due diligence, trying to build up that fund balance. Trying to build that up every year.
So, I'm not sure if everybody followed that conversation, but essentially, there's about 160+ thousand should we have a shortfall in the proposed budget line for that line, correct? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make that clear, that we're not at where you'd like to be, but there's money in the unassigned fund balance, should that, we have a shortfall on that line.
Just a point
Yeah,
of
go ahead.
clarification, it was the auditors that gave the SAU board the instruction to make sure that the unfunded liabilities became funded. So it's not that the administration isn't where they would want to be, it's that the auditors would feel that we are not doing what we are supposed to do as a board.
Ms. Savage?
I feel like we've just kind of gone on a tangent. I believe the original motion was to remove the funds from a position that's not funded, correct? We're not looking to change that. I mean, so if the position's not funded, we don't need the funds in that line for that purpose. So there's no harm in taking that money out of that line. And we're not affecting the unfunded balance, we're not affecting anything else. We're talking about taking out of a completely different line, and it's not going to affect what we're setting aside for those, unfunded liabilities. So I just feel like we've gone off on a tangent, and at this point, I would ask the chair to move the question. I mean, we're going in circles.
I'll move the amendment.
Yeah, point of
Of the amendment.
clarification, the position was funded, just not filled. Those are
Correct.
two different things. You said funded,
Okay.
not funded.
Never
We're looking to remove the funding for a non-filled position.
I will second her motion to call the question.
Okay, motion's been made to call the question. All those in favor
Of what?
of calling the question?
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy?
Sorry, I was writing.
Sorry, go ahead.
calling the question.
Are you using weighted voting to call questions?
Wait,
Are we using weighted voted
Yes.
call questions?
Yes, yes.
So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total, and we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 7.
Okay, all those opposed? Right. Okay, so that, you can do the calculation for the record, but that motion is going to pass. So the question's been called. Kathy, can you just take us through because this is on the amendment first, and I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Who said in favor? I do need to track this to the record as well. So the two individuals who voted in favor of the motion was Jason. And those opposed were. There's one more. Thank you. So now I calculated it correctly. The motion on the floor is an amendment. The motion. Two. Amend by reducing the. Reduced by removing the new support staff position are 25,000, decreasing the salary line, I guess, by 15,847, and decreasing line 232580 by 10,000, with a total reduction of $60,847.77.
Okay. Okay, so this is now a vote on the motion to amend. This is not the final motion, this is simply the motion to amend. You ready, Kathy? Okay, all those in favor?
Six.
6.
Sorry.
Okay, all those opposed? Yes, Mr. Dow?
Are they all set?
No, she's calculating.
Okay. Okay.
Give Kathy a minute.
We have 8 members tonight voting. We can go over there for it's 2738. We have 16428 in favor. And 10952 opposed.
Okay, so that motion, the motion to amend succeeds.
I'm sorry, point of order. I don't think you've got the total vote. There should be 302 votes total.
So I did 4 times it.
28.38 times 8, right?
Times 6.
No,
6 were in
six.
favor.
6.
Times 6.
Times 6.
6.7 or 28?
6 of 8.
27.83 times 2. 2 Timberland votes.
Right, plus,
D, I missed it, I just over at 55.
I'm 40.
Plus
137.
138.66 is what I got. I apologize
yes,
for that.
no problem. I just wanted to make sure that the total added up correctly.
64.
I got that right. That's what I got for the second one.
So the motion to
137,
amend
76.
has passed. Dr. Metzler, did you want to add anything?
I'm good.
Are there any additional, because we're back to the, oh, sorry, Mr. Dowd.
Perfect, thank you. So I know we have not covered the audit report, but I know that you've all had a copy of it, and I'm sure you've reviewed it. And in the audit report for SAU, there were a couple of deficiencies noted in internal controls and in terms of adjusting journal entries. And I had previously mentioned, you probably heard this from me before, to some degree, for example, adjusting journal entry review, that's been an issue that the auditors have spoken about in years past under the former business administrator. I think that the findings are coming up now because of the fact that, or these deficiencies are being noted now, because I think that there is an issue to some degree of internal controls, and wanting to have to make sure that we have enough staff in place to make sure that we're able to accomplish the separation of duties and meet our internal control requirements. So I will point out that it was around that time that position was not filled, that the support position was not filled, knowing that these comments may be out there. You had discussions with our audit team regarding that. So these aren't incredibly dissimilar to what we'd seen in the past. I think now, particularly with the adjusting journal entry review, I think now, however, these end up in the report because of our staffing level. So my point is that if I would be concerned that they may materialize again in some way if there is not that separation of duties that the audit team is calling for internal controls. So I'll put that out there. I think that you all have been noted. You've received information on that as well. So I think that's why we're seeing it this year.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Any further discussions? The motion on the floor is to approve the budget and advance it to the public hearing based on with the amendment that has been passed.
So
Wanna
can
read
we
the
have the
number?
bottom line down?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Get a number?
The revised,
21, 172,471 and subtract 50847.
Sorry, can you just read that one more time?
You should take
60.
2,172,471
Yep.
and subtract 50,000,
60.
847.
60.
60.
I'm sorry, 60,847. I think I missed.
$2,086,622.
Oh, you have, Kim?
I actually didn't total it up.
Can you say it again, please?
$2,086,622.
Okay. That's a revised bottom line. Yes, Kathleen?
I just wanted to
That
ask
doesn't make
again
sense either.
where the $60,847 figure came from.
No, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, not the three different components that you wanted to remove it from, but how you came up with looking for $60,847.
I removed the
All
non-filled
right.
position, that was 35,000. And then I took half of,
That's all right.
Well, Kim, you took, it's 5847 out of the salary line,
correct,
and then the other 10 was the conference line.
correct.
You broke it into 3, but it's really 2.
It's really two.
Okay.
But I mean, was your 60,000, was that your target? Looking to reduce by 60,000 based on something? Like surplus?
No,
No. So the $60,000, that just was the consequence of the three items that you looked at?
correct.
Point of order, we've already discussed this question and have moved on.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. The motion has been amended. Any further discussion? Dr. Farr?
I would like to speak to Mr. Dowd's point concerning internal control audits and such, and the removal of this $35,000 non-filled position. I was on the board last year when this position was added to the budget. There was no discussion, I don't recall, and maybe I'm incorrect, but this was to alleviate some of the issues that we had with right to know. And there was also a discussion about issues with transportation. So I recall that was the rationale for that position. That may have changed, I'm not saying that, but that was the rationale as I remember it last year.
Right.
It-
You are
it
right.
was. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Okay.
If I may,
Mr. Duff.
my comments were why the position was left open. The position was left open because we had identified that there was a greater need here in finance, in discussion with our auditor. So that's why that position was left open.
Dr. Metzler?
Yeah, and it was far more strategic. You know, personnel changed over. We had some different people move to different positions within the SAU, and so it left some positions open, and then that gets to what benefits are they taking? When new people come in, some people take a family plan, some people don't take, you know, there's a lot of things there were a lot of changes last year from the fall through the spring. And then we obviously had some areas of concern, and so it was an opportunity, so it was far more strategic to leave the positions unfilled at that time. But that's really what happened, but Kim's right, initially that was the discussion, let's help with transportation and some of the extra work that Kathy has to take on, but we're good.
Okay. Any further discussion? Sue, you look like you were.
Yeah, so here we are now with a budget of 2 million, et cetera. Now what? Do we need to vote this, or do we just move it along? So we need to vote.
We will
I'd
need
like-
to vote it.
I'd like to vote this budget and move along, if we could.
Okay, are you asking to call the question?
Call the question.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to call the question. All those in favor? Kathy, a minute.
Oh, sorry.
Got it? All those opposed?
No, I was just putting my hand down late, sorry.
Okay.
Do you need to calculate that, or you?
That motion will carry, but for the record, please make sure that you have the calculation. Okay, so the motion to call the question has been made, seconded, and has passed. We'll now proceed to the vote. The vote is on the budget, the revised bottom line, $2,086,622. Jeff, is that correct? Just one more last check before. Okay, that's correct? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Kathy, you got everything you need? So, again, you'll do the calculations. It's clear that passed. So the motion, the budget passed and will be moved on to public hearing. Yes, Dr. Metzler.
Excellent. Now, Kathy has done the research about posting and available dates and what it will mean for both Hampstead and Timberlane. I believe the earliest date that we confirmed is the 14th.
That's correct. Inside your packets, I did put a little new calendar to show you. If you look at this here, agenda information sheet.
So what it means is it has to be posted, and then the earliest we can have the public hearing is the 14th, which means we're going to have special hearings, public hearings in both Hampstead and Timberlane to adjust your budgets, your proposed budgets to, for different numbers from the SAU line.
Mr. Cipriano?
Yes.
If I recall correctly, I believe the court order actually said, I think we have to hold our public hearing before the 7th. Is that correct, Mr. Eckert?
I don't believe so. I think that you have to.
There's something on the 7th, I believe.
Finalize only posting the notice. You have until the 7th of January to post your notice for a public hearing. You have until prior to the 15th of January in which to finalize it so that it can be apportioned to the other two school district budgets. That's what's going to require the supplemental public hearings for those two districts because they would have already held their public hearings. The law allows you to have as many supplemental budget hearings as you need to, right up to deliberative session, as long as you meet the 7-day notification requirement. So by doing this, the earliest I can get it in the newspaper is the 4th. I've already confirmed that. I tried to get it in earlier. That's the best that we can do. That would allow you for a January 14th public hearing for the SAU budget. And then that information will then go into the two districts and they'll have supplemental public hearings because they may adjust their budgets. So that's how that would work.
Okay.
The hope was to try to get it before the 8th, because Hampstead's public hearing is on the 8th and Timberlane's on the 10th. That was the hope. But this posting thing with the newspaper is really the challenge.
That was not waived. That requirement was not waived.
So both districts are going to have a second public hearing.
Depending on how you time it, it's possible, or I think it might be possible if we can get notification, and I'm not exactly sure, I don't know if I counted those. It's possible to have the supplemental public hearing prior to one of your already scheduled hearing meetings, if you can make the calendar work. I did not count all those days out.
Why would we just not move each respective district, just move their public hearing?
They've already been noticed.
Oh.
Pay the expense, put in the newspaper.
Yeah.
They're a couple $100 a piece.
We've noticed public hearings for this board right now that have changed.
If it's the will of the board to change everybody's public hearings,
No, I'm talking about this, the SA,
So theirs can't move, because they also have a bond hearing on that night.
all right, that's a different issue.
We always have to take into consideration more than one person's needs.
I understand that, Dr. Vincent. The point is that, you know what, it's not even worth it.
Okay. Okay. So we have our calendar, and Kathy, you'll do the best to get it into the papers as quickly as, get it into the papers as quickly as possible to meet the required notification requirements. Silva?
Just so you have some advance notice, I know last meeting I gave you 48 hours notice that I wasn't going to be able to attend, but I'm not sure that I'll be there on the 14th, just so everybody's clear on that.
Yep.
And I'm going to state the same thing. I know I gave you short notice the last time, but I tried to move my schedule. I can try again, but right now I have 2 conflicts already on the 14th.
Understand. Yeah.
I'll be late.
Okay. Okay. All right, Mr. Dowd, the auditor's report, 2017.
Point of order.
Yes.
I would like to motion to proceed with the December 28th, 2018 agenda as submitted to the court as Exhibit D of the Hampstead's emergency petition to the court.
I will second that.
I'm motioning to proceed with the December 28th, 2018 agenda as submitted to the court as Exhibit D in Hampstead's emergency petition to the court.
Could you clarify what that agenda? I apologize, I just don't have it in front of me.
Not the posted agenda.
I understand.
It included the hearing.
And this was,
included
this
the
was your
non-publics.
court. And this, you've already, the next item on the agenda would be the non-public session, RSA 91A:3,
So that,
2C.
that meeting agenda is for a public hearing. Farrah, that meeting agenda that you're referring to is for the public hearing.
No, there's a, this is the agenda. It is item number 5 on the agenda.
That's correct. Item number 4 is the public hearing that we just discussed that we can't have until later on.
I think there's a motion on the floor in a second.
Okay.
The agenda is posted as an SAU board meeting. It's not noticed as a public hearing. The public
The-
hearing was just a portion of the board meeting.
The agenda that Dr. Farrar is referring to includes a public hearing.
Yes,
it
it's
is
part
posted
as
as a-
one item on the agenda for a board meeting. And she is asking to continue with that agenda that was posted.
There's a motion on the floor in a second.
I don't believe that it's appropriate to deviate from the agenda this evening. There is a motion on the floor, and it has been seconded. So I'll entertain the motion. Is there a discussion? Yes, Ms. Sherman.
Can I ask for, Dr. Farrar, just for point of clarification? So she's referring to, I'm looking at Kristen's, I didn't bring this packet with me. She's referring to number 5 and number 6 on that printed
Correct.
agenda. Okay.
Is there any additional Mr. Boyle, and then I'll get to you.
What is it? What are the items? What's 5 and 6?
Non-public session under 2C and under 2L.
That's what both of them are,
Yeah.
5 and 6?
5 is 2C, 6 is 2L.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yep,
I'd like to call for a caucus of the Hampstead School Board.
okay. That supersedes the motion. We'll take a brief recess and allow for a caucus of the individual district boards, and then we'll return. Okay, all right. So I'm calling us back to order. It's 8:06. We have a motion on the floor. That motion was to modify the agenda, consistent with the comments that Dr. Farrar has made. I will state for the record that I believe that this is inconsistent with the court order, and I don't believe it's appropriate, but the motion has been made and has been seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Dr. Farrar?
The Hampstead Board requested a caucus. I would like to know under what policy they took that caucus.
I think it's under BBBH, I believe.
That only applies under special meetings. 5E.
Robert Rules of Order.
Okay. So noted. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Sherman?
To clarify, at least one of those non-publics was asked for by the Timberlane Board, I believe.
That's
We're
correct.
we don't seem to know what the other non-public was for or listed by, but the one we wanted was on there, so. I'm just telling you, we put it on there. I asked on behalf of the board to have you put it on the agenda.
Okay. Any further discussion? Dr. Farrar?
For the record, the other non-public under L, I am not aware of why that was added to the agenda, though I have, in writing, requested that Mr. Cipriano include me in any conversations regarding to legal matters pertaining to SAU55.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? You can put your hands down. I think she's.
Oh, it's not on non-public yet. This is just a change.
This is just to go, to add that.
To go into non-public, weighted voting doesn't apply, just to be sure.
We have 191.66 in favor and 99.6 opposed.
Okay, so that motion carries. Yes, Dr.
I
Farrar.
would like to note for the record that the court order specifically required a meeting on the proposed budget to be passed by January 1, 2019. By placing the audit report on the agenda, that opened the door for other business to be conducted at this meeting.
Anything else? Okay. So, under the December 28th meeting agenda that Dr. Farrar has requested be the new agenda, the public hearing. Not really sure how I can call the order a public hearing. That hasn't been noticed.
Point of order, it was noticed as an SAU board meeting, not as a public hearing.
The agenda that you're referring to?
Yes? Yes.
It didn't refer to that line item as a public hearing?
It referred to a line item within
It wasn't
the
noticed as a
agenda.
public hearing because the budget wasn't placed forward at the previous meeting.
Okay.
So it didn't get noticed properly as a public hearing.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so then the next agenda item would be the non-public. Is there a motion?
Motion to enter non-public under,
Isn't the
Audit
audit
on
on
the,
Oh, I'm sorry, is the audit before that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I
Should be.
apologize. Mr. Dowd, let's get to the
no,
audit.
the audit was,
no, the audit,
was not before that.
the audit was.
The audit was not even on
Oh,
that
the audit-
original
the audit was on-
agenda.
on that
That's
agenda.
correct, your audit was on the,
So we are under policy required to review the audit. So if we don't review the audit for this meeting, then we are
that was,
That'd be a great item to add to the agenda.
Would be.
on the agenda.
I'll second that.
We second it.
But
I didn't
it's already on,
there's no, there was no
I'll make the
motion.
motion to add the audit to the agenda.
it's already
Motion
on
has
the
been
agenda.
made to add the
Second.
audit to the agenda. The motion has been
Goes
seconded.
to this, not
Is there any
after that.
discussion to add the audit, the auditor's report to the agenda?
Can we just point a clarification?
Yep.
I thought we were on.
The motion, the first motion was to, were we adding
5 and 6.
to this current agenda?
No, the motion was to proceed with the December 28th agenda that was submitted to the court.
Okay.
So that agenda had the call to order, roll call, pledge of allegiance, public hearing on the budget, non-public session under A and non-public session under L.
Okay.
And then adjournment. There's a new motion, forgive me, Mr. Spiarno, I think there's a new
Fine.
motion on the floor requesting to add the audit to the agenda.
At what point? What number?
I-
That would be,
Want to clarify
Number-
that, Mr.
Number
O'Neill?
7?
I would entertain that. I'll move that to the head of the queue, so it'd be the next agenda item.
That's the next agenda item. So to add the auditor's report as the next agenda item. Okay? Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, this is on the motion to add the audit as the next agenda item. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Yeah, pretty much. So
Any abstentions?
you gotta vote somehow.
No. Kathy, you can do the calculations on that, but that motion will carry. So the next agenda item is the auditor's report. Mr. Dowd?
Thank you, Mr. Brianna. Board members, you'll have in front of you
Yeah, we did hear this.
a copy of the Pontigan Sanderson audit report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2017. I have a cover letter from Plotzik and Sanderson dated June 11, 2018, the rest of the members of the board. Some general notations on the audit. I'll reference you to the third page of that audit, page 3, which, under other matters, references implementation of new GASB pronouncements. So in particular, we have GASB number 75, which speaks to post-employment benefits other than pensions. And I will note that we are undergoing a review of that for compliance as part of the year-end audit process as well. We're due for an update at SAU, Timberlane, and Hampstead as individual districts were updated last year. Within the audit report itself, you'll find, if you proceed to the next couple pages after the cover page, table of contents, the independent auditors report, their responsibilities, their opinions, and what those mean in the audit. Next is the management discussion and analysis, which is prepared by my office, and you'll note just some peripheral information relating to how the audit, how the financial statements are set up. Some financial highlights from the audit from the 16-17 school year. I include some comparative data for governmental activities. I don't intend to go through the whole packet in this way. However, there is some value in looking or having that comparative data for our balance sheet, for our next page is the revenue analysis, and under the revenue analysis, you'll see the breakdown between district, between Hampstead and Timberlane, and any increases over the course of the years therein. It's miscellaneous revenue in a previous year, but typically Timberlane and Hampstead are the primary sources of revenue. Statement of expenditures is next. Again, when these are presented within the financial statement themselves, they are not comparative in nature. They don't take the year just ended and compare it with the year before. So I've done that, broken out by general administrative, executive administration, business, other plant maintenance, and other general. So you can see how those lines differ from year to year. You'll see under fund balance, now on page 7, under fund balance, there's a question as to how much of the unassigned fund balance is used for beginning fund balance for the next year. You'll see there a note that we used $25,000 in that year. No long-term debt on page 8, and a listing of our compensated absences, of post-employment benefits, and pension liability net. Net pension liability is discussed further in the report itself. Next, you'll move on to the basic financial statements, and I'll let those speak for themselves. There are a number of statements in there as far as balance sheets go. Statement of activities, each broken out separately. The financial statements present these figures from a couple different perspectives. For SAU, we don't have as many other funds and other areas that we generate revenue, which you would typically see in the districts themselves. So you'll see this is a little bit more condensed than the individual district reports. Following along, page 17 in the report itself discusses a lot of the areas that are mentioned in the audit, what makes up, for example, cash equivalents, receivables, compensated absences, and beyond that, we have some discussion in note 7 on long-term liabilities, which again are those compensated absences and other employee benefits, and particularly the pension-related liability. Without boring everyone too much, we have some actuarial data to follow, and some other OPEB is other post-employment benefit factors. Required supplementary information goes into some of our share of, for example, net pension liability, and I think as Mr. O'Neill had pointed out, that we're probably in better shape than the New Hampshire retirement system in terms of having our post-employment benefits, these are current post-employment benefits, articulated in our financial statements, noted in our financial statements. Not to worry, on page 27, you'll see how our district or how our SAU is included in the New Hampshire retirement system's net, as a net pension liability. So that's presented over the course of years as well. So we shouldn't be left out. They're included in our pension obligation. Moving toward the end, you'll see some individual fund schedules. Again, we don't have many funds per se. We have a general fund. Last in the report are independent auditors' communication of significant deficiencies and material weaknesses, which I believe that you've seen at the individual district levels. Both general ledger reconciliation and adjusting journal entries are noted. These were noted late in the year, and we have been able to rework some of our office staff to be able to break up those roles and responsibilities a little bit better. In terms of general ledger reconciliation, one of the issues that we have is that I control the ledger and my staff all write checks or initiate wires and that sort of thing. So the question is, how do we make sure that we have enough independence in the process? And I've been able to break that process up amongst a couple of my staff, and with having me to review what their final product is. It's the same thing with adjusting journal entries, and you've probably heard this at your individual district levels as well. I've created an automated workflow for adjusting journal entries, so that if those adjusting journal entries come from one of my staff, I can approve it and review it electronically or send it back to the employee. So as far as journal entries generated by myself, those are still reviewed, but it might be a question of how thorough is that review. But there aren't a tremendous amount of adjusting journal entries that occur at the SAU55 level anyway. So I'll ask, with that whirlwind tour of our audit report and financial statements, is there any questions?
Mr. Boyle.
You may have just touched on these. So I just went right to the, basically, right at the end of the page there where they're making recommendations. So you just addressed, Jeff, so you deal with they found the deficiencies in adjusting journal entries.
Correct.
We heard something along these lines at the Timberlane level too. So as you've already made these corrections, and I guess I'm asking a question. I'm assuming these corrections have been made, and when I look at the general ledger reconciliation, I assume that these are probably more current than this time last year, with the new treasurer. And so if you could just kind of comment on those two paragraphs, general ledger reconciliation as well as the adjusting journal entries.
Yep.
If you could
Yep.
expand upon that a little bit.
So so I'll adjust general ledger reconciliation, and so what I've done there is I've pushed some of that work down to my staff. They've been able to absorb it, and broken those responsibilities up. So I have one person getting the data and another person reconciling out the data to the account. I really can't have one person in my department who is generating data then go after and reconcile that data themselves. So that was a question that I had, how do I do that? And I was able to break it up between two of my staff. So those reports are, my staff work through whatever those, what their steps are at the end of the month, and present the reconciliation to me. We can address any issues that we have or any questions we have relative to the general ledger reconciliation itself, or any outstanding items. I think it's important to note that when audit came in, they were in quite late last year. So and I spoke earlier to the board on this issue, particularly with adjusting journal entries. I know that had been something that even under the former business administrator, we didn't have an automated workflow for journal entries. And I wasn't always reviewing those journal entries that might have been made by the business administrator in a timely way or at all. Sometimes they would just get made and they would get done and we'd move on. So I think you're seeing maybe both of these, and particularly the adjusting journal entries deficiency highlighted, due to the fact that we still have, still in need of someone to review my journal entries. They came in a little later in the year, and I believe made these recommendations because they identified it as a problem that, well, okay, you have the right people, just make it work. Well, I think it's being called out here, perhaps due to the fact that there is perhaps a staffing issue relative to those two areas. So I think that if there were staffing needs met, and quite frankly, I'm not sure with them having come in so late into current year, for a majority of the year, these findings may still be there. I don't know what impact it has if audit is made aware that staffing levels are the same. We may find these, again, we may find, in particularly the adjusting journal entries, finding, not because it's not being approved, but the question is, what's the thoroughness of approval? If I have one of my staff review a journal entry, are they going to fully know what that entails?
Where are we on the first part, like general ledger
I
reconciliation?
think we're doing good on that. I think we're doing good on
Cash
that.
and receiving, yeah, okay.
Yep.
And this is that the function that's being done pretty much by the treasurer? Or?
No, she does her own. The treasurers do their
okay.
own. Yeah, the way that it really needs to work is the treasurer needs to take a look and operate on what she's been given, the vouchers that this board has authorized, deposits that are made. And she'll run her own. She has a great schedule for it, and very neat, very organized. And then my office does its own. So my office a lot of times will identify, hey, we have this check was voided, and we want to make sure that you got it. This was a reissue on the check, for example. So you have two parallel reconciliation processes going on at once. If there's a problem or a question, typically she'll pop into the office when she's signing a check, say, hey, what do you have for this, or did you find something there? We've been able to work with both treasurers, actually, to upload the vouchers, for example, that this board signs onto an online or shared folder so that they have access to the information timely while they're doing the reconciliations. Formerly we had, and we still have with the Timberlane treasurer, a paper process where she gets the paper, but we upload it anyway. So if there's a piece of paper that she doesn't have, she can look and see, oh yeah, I did see that, or it's there. So I think that it's more timely all around. If there are any exceptions, we can upload those to the folder as well.
Thanks.
Ms. Lowe's.
Have they been in to do the audit this year yet?
Yes.
Done? Out, or?
No, I believe Timberlane is very close to being complete in terms of the audit report being issued. And SAU, I don't have a date of completion on that. I don't anticipate that it would be very far out.
They've spent all their energy on Timberlane to try to meet that.
I'm just asking if they started, if they've
Oh, yeah.
if they've come in to start this, where we were on this one, that's all.
The SAU one's relatively quick. Hampstead will take some time after they finish the Timberlane.
Any other questions, Dr. Farr?
Why did the auditors come in so late this year?
I think there's a question as to their ongoing engagement in the first place.
This year, right now? This fall or the?
Correct.
I think it was.
Typically, they come in the summer, right? July, August?
August,
But this year, they did not come in till
October.
October.
They had very specific, requirements, and our consultant that you hired helped get us really organized for them, so it was far more efficient for them to come in. They came in a little bit later, but they weren't here nearly as long as they've been in the past. So you're right, they usually block out like a week in August, could be 2 weeks, they usually take over. They were in and out pretty quickly, because they had things organized and had access to what they were looking for pretty quickly. And I spoke to no fewer than 10 different, I think, auditors during the time. They rotate through, it's not the same ones. And I just happened to, every time one would come in, I'd be down there talking to them, and so they seemed to be more efficient. So it was later, but they're getting the audit done sooner, I figure.
Okay, Dr. Farr.
Do we have current job descriptions for anybody who is working in business operations? I know it came up when we had our board meeting. You keep talking about adding staff, changing staff. Does everybody have a current job description?
Yeah, we have a cost group, it's a central office support staff, and Kathy chairs that group, and so they all have different job descriptions. That's all the support staff. You're talking beyond Jeff, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So they all have job descriptions. Those job descriptions change sometimes when there are personnel changes, but for the most part, those job descriptions, they did not exist at all, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We created most of those job descriptions for the support staff in the last, we did it 5 years ago, right? 4 or 5 years ago?
So we have
Ballpark.
current job descriptions for everybody in the SAU.
Correct. In addition to, we did it kind of both ways. We have job descriptions, what our expectations are, and then there's what they actually do. Because a lot of times people will always remind you all the other things they do that are not in the job description when you ask. So we try to merge those two so that we know exactly what we expected people to do, but also what the additional work that they were doing, because they had either inherited it because it was something you were really good at, and then you changed your position and you still did a particular function. But I think you may be talking more just about the business office in terms of.
No, I'm
You're
talking
talking about
about,
everything, yeah. Well, we do, but the business office is a little different than the whole office.
all right, I'd like to make a motion to have the board, the SAU board, have an electronic copy of all job descriptions for the business office.
Just the business office or the whole SAU?
Well,
All 13.5
All four-
employees
all,
for the,
all the SAU employees.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Is there discussion?
Seconded by,
Mr. O'Neill?
thank you.
As part of the discussion, one of the reasons they weren't being evaluated either, so, this is going back 5, 6, 7 years. So in part of the evaluation process, and it would be what any good employee would ask, like, well, I don't have a job description. How are you going to evaluate me when I don't have a job description? So that was the first step. We put the job descriptions in place, and then we had the whole, all of the central office staff pretty much evaluated all of the support staff. That was a new process. We met with them, all the administrators met with individual support staff members to provide them feedback, which was, we didn't do that every year. We did that initially. We were a little intimidated by it at first, but it seemed to give them good feedback. And then everybody understood everybody's function beyond the only person, like Kathy works for me, but I had, knowing what everybody else is doing for everyone else, except for just the direct reports. You follow me? You follow me? Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
just, I'm following you, I want to see the current job, you
Right.
keep talking about, or people keep talking about understaffing, this staffing, that staffing. Our consultant that we hired was not aware of, that the position he was asking for, currently, at least the job description I had, already existed, so I think it would be helpful when we talk about staffing
I
to
spoke
have the
with-
current job descriptions, that's all. I'm following what you're saying, I know
Okay.
things.
I didn't want to lose you in.
No, you didn't lose me at all.
In the
I'm
kind of the
just-
history of the whole thing, but I did speak to him privately after that meeting, and I'm not sure the answer that he
Yes,
gave.
point of order, I don't
Timberlake
think we
issue.
want to get beyond that.
Well, okay.
That was our
yeah,
consultant.
yeah. Your consultant, but he was aware of the position, even though he answered differently in that Timberlake meeting. But that's beside the point. I talked to him afterwards. But anyway, the job descriptions are available, and that was the history of the job descriptions that didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago. They do exist. Kathy chairs that group. It's called COS. It's a central office support staff, and so we can get you all those job descriptions. I mean, if it makes sense, you're asking for, you have job descriptions of the whole SAU. I mean, kind of the administrative, some of them you already know, because you have them. Right. And then you'd have the support staff of who they report to. We have an organizational chart that goes with it, and so.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? No further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Got all that, Kathy? Okay. So motion passes.
I would ask, give Kathy just a little bit of time to put it in presentation format, if that's okay. We'd want it to be, if we're gonna have something, want it to look, I don't want a bunch of things.
What's a reasonable expectation to expect it?
Well, you're gonna meet on the 14th, we should have it, can we get it by the 14th?
The motion, I believe, was,
Collect all the job descriptions. You're asking me a question, I haven't seen them yet, so I don't know if they're all, whether or not they're all current. As I had alluded to, is that sometimes people are asked to do other jobs outside of what their job descriptions are. I don't know if you just want them as they are right now, or do you want them updated so that they reflect all of what they do? I'm not sure what the use of what the use is for.
Well, I guess the use is,
You decide what it is that you're looking for, and if it means it needs to be updated, then it would need to be updated and done. I think for that. I don't know where people are, I don't know where the job descriptions are as it relates to how up to date they are.
okay.
Is that helpful? I mean,
Well, I'm a little confused, because I
something
thought
really
I just heard,
that you want.
okay, I
If
understand.
it's for, then maybe it could, then maybe they do need to be updated. There's been some shifts within the business office, so I can't speak to the job description for the support staff in the business office. I don't know where they are as it relates to them being current and up to date. So, but I do, and I'm happy to give them to you as they are. So,
Okay, I guess, and I'm just, I know what you're trying to say, and I guess I'm just trying to, the reason to have them is that we just talked about the fact that, people were concerned or saying that we had this open position for somebody and that we weren't filling because things had shifted around and people are not doing, so, but clearly the job descriptions You're telling me that the job descriptions are not up to date to reflect what people are actually doing?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, you don't
as I
know.
was saying,
Okay.
Because there's so many shifts in the business office, I cannot tell you matter of
Okay.
factly as to whether or not they're all up to date.
Perhaps by,
That's, I just want to
Okay.
be clear on that. I don't want you to, I just don't want you to ask for something, get something different than what you're asking for with an expectation that we're not unclear on, that we're not all clear on, so.
okay, maybe
We've got
by,
them- What we've got right now, I'm happy to collect those
Yeah. We-
and make those available to you.
well,
We
maybe-
have job descriptions, just some people have shifted jobs, and some of the, we have something, I just want to make sure it's in presentation format, what's a realistic, I mean, we can pull together what we have, we can update it, make sure it's right up to date. You know, it's up to you. That may, you know, I didn't know what date you were going to throw out, I'm thinking try to have it by the 14th, that's why I'm asking Kathy.
Well, it doesn't sound like that's a reasonable expectation based on what Mrs. Belcher is relaying back to me. So I would like to know, I mean, what about by the 14th, we have some idea of when we could expect those? We're only expecting to, I'd like to just see them electronically to have a better understanding of who's working in the SAU, what their function is, and what the gaps might be. It's kind of, I don't know, interesting to me that some people on the board aren't interested in what the job descriptions are of the SAU, but that's their, you know, I don't want to make it unreal. I want what's really going on. So I don't want job descriptions that are really not what the jobs are. And I don't want an old org chart if that's not what we're going by. So maybe by the 14th, you can have a better idea, that's all.
I believe you, if they're not all available, I can just be a status update of when they will be, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, and I don't think they need to be in person. I mean, if it were me and somebody asked for me the job descriptions for my staff, I'd take them, put them in a pile and scan them in and send them out.
See,
I'm
we
not
have-
looking for a presentation.
See, that, we have them like that, to some degree, but some of the jobs have changed a little bit.
Yeah, they have.
Let's take a look at them. I'd like for them to be up to date, I'd like to be in a presentation kind of format when I'm giving them to the board, but
Right, and it's no secret, you're a finalist for two, I mean, you could
Can we-
not be
point of
here.
order.
I'm sorry,
Can we just
I'm sorry.
collegially say that, can we shoot for the 14th?
Do your
We're gonna
best.
be here on the 14th. If that doesn't work, you'd let somebody know, oh my gosh, I haven't got it all done, and we'd be collegially happy, because we're operating in good faith, that we'd give you a little bit of more time. The motion passed, we will get those either electronically or in printed form, what those job requirement statements are. Can we collegially agree to the 14th?
I think so. Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. Thank you, Mrs. Sherman. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Dowd relating to the audit? If there are no other questions relating to the audit, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the audit and to forward it on to the New Hampshire DRA.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing no additional discussion, all those in favor? Seems to be unanimous.
And can you tell me who seconded that, please?
I did, Susan Sherman.
Okay.
use the calculator.
Okay. Next, you, a motion for non-public? Dr. Farrar?
I'd like to make a motion to enter non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2C.
Before you, Kim, is that like at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, will we be coming back? I guess
That's what I'm
I'll
asking.
ask that.
That,
Well, why, is there something you wanted to add, go?
yeah, I guess I want to ask the chair if, just from previous meetings when this board, if we could make sure we put delegates and individuals on future meetings. So before, well, the whole board is still here. My two concerns is I was looking for, make sure delegates and individuals is all future SAU meetings. And in light of what happened in the last, I don't know, 10 days, if we could probably direct the superintendent, he may or may not have the information, if we could get a list of all attorneys, who represents who. You know, just, yeah, you know, that's all. Those are my two concerns.
So I think-
I just wanted, before we go into a non-public.
All right, so I think what you're saying is that, I don't know if we need a motion for this, Mr. Cipriano. You want delegates and individuals added to the agenda. in compliance with the vote that we had on October 3rd, 2018.
I'm more concerned with future meetings.
Future meetings, just reiterating that the board voted that, and then it has not been done by the chair. Do we need another motion on that?
I've heard Mr. Boyle, so on both.
And then you'd like to make a motion to direct the superintendent to provide to the SAU board a list of attorneys that have been hired, retained, or re-engaged by SAU55 within the last year? Is that what you're requesting?
I'm not, I don't care about the, I guess I'm trying,
Well,
I'm trying to
I think we
understand.
need to put some time frame on it.
Currently?
Currently?
Okay, last 6 months, I mean, I'm trying to understand for future reference here because we,
Who's partnering up with who?
well, combination was partner up with who, and then, and we, when we were tasked, come up with things very quickly, so I'm trying to get a feel for a scorecard here. What firm is representing who?
Well, I could do that real quick,
Well-
because personal attorneys is really not your business, so that's not something I would give
I'm not
anyone.
asking for
We
president.
didn't ask that.
I know, you said all attorneys is what you said. Who's representing who?
All right.
Not whom, not whom,
Okay.
who.
All right, all right.
You got Jim O'Shaughnessy from Drummond Woodson, who represents all three boards. You got Bob Casassa, who represents the SAU when Jim O'Shaughnessy cannot represent because of adverse parties. I don't know who you've hired, but Hampstead has Dean Eggert that represents Hampstead. That's pretty much it. And you have a real estate attorney from Massachusetts, right? I don't know the name.
Well, he does things beyond real estate, yes.
Okay.
That's your list of attorneys.
You get a little,
Now-
you get a little better source than Facebook, I guess.
Drummond Woodson has a deep bench, so you may recognize different names, but it's the same firm.
Yep.
They have a labor attorney, they have someone that does special ed, they have people that negotiate for them. They have a very, very deep bench. Best bench in New Hampshire
Yep.
and Maine.
Okay,
Great.
okay.
So, well, Mrs. Belcher, if you could, I guess that will exist once the minutes get done. That the list of those, that'd be great. Super. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Farr?
I'd like to motion to rescind the spring vote that authorizes the chair to sign contracts.
I will second that.
I think you need to notice that before, I think that.
You do need to notice that.
I think the board needs to vote. So my understanding for that is that in order to rescind a motion that's already taken, is that you need to put the board on notice, so it gets on the agenda as an intent to pull back a motion. So I don't believe that you can do it at this meeting, but you could do it at a future meeting if you were going to notice the board of your intent to do that.
I will
Next meeting, the
withdraw
14th?
that. I will make the motion to request that the chair put that on the agenda for the next meeting,
And the topic again?
to rescind the vote that authorizes the chair to sign contracts for the board.
And what would you have to be a yes vote to change to no? Is that how that works? And if
To
you weren't
rescind
somebody
the
that voted, you
motion,
can't
yes.
rescind a yes vote if you weren't somebody that was part of it, right? So you'd have to be a yes vote that voted to change to no, and if you didn't vote, you have no vote in this rescinding of a
So
motion.
this motion is just to.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah, but this motion is just a request for an agenda item for this particular topic.
Right.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? I think Kathy got it.
Do you remember what the vote was?
I was going to cheat, but I'll just do it.
The original vote?
Yeah.
Pretty sure 10-4.
Oh, we have three people that, or, no,
No,
two?
that was
Three?
the
How many
vote
people that
for
weren't
the
here?
chairmanship.
No, I think pretty much most votes were 10-4. I feel pretty confident saying that.
I don't think we voted.
I could be wrong.
There was only two of us that weren't here.
doesn't matter, just trying to put something on the agenda.
This doesn't put us on notice.
Just want to give Kathy a chance to finish.
So, the
How does that
motion
work? Yeah.
passed, 164.28 to 110.
It was 3, Sheila.
I believe Sean was here.
At the reorganization meeting? I think he came on after they were already reorganized.
Yeah,
I
no,
might be
he
wrong.
wasn't part of the reorg.
I'm not
Stephanie
100%
was
sure,
still
but I think
here?
he came on in April and they had already reorganized in March.
Yeah,
Sean,
yeah.
What's that? I'm not. I wasn't
talking about
paying
you and you're
attention.
not even answering.
Were you
Were
here
you
at the
here for the
reorg meeting in April?
reorganization?
All right, you got it, Kathy?
I do, I apologize.
I guess the
Okay,
record will
there's no
reflect if I
problem.
was there.
No problem.
The motion did pass, 164.28 to 137.76.
Okay. Dr. Farr? I think you had your hand.
I do want to let the rest of the board know that I provided Mr. Cipriano with some additions that I would like to see made on the draft minutes, so I'm hoping that those will get distributed to the board. I know the minutes are already out in draft form.
So we just lose those 3 votes
Anything else?
if we're sitting in that position.
I'd like to motion for a meeting in late January after the public hearing on the budget.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made to request a meeting in late January after the budget. And seconded. Is there further discussion? No, seeing no discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed?
So you've got the 6, the 3, 164.28 to 137.76.
Make the motion not to go in non-public.
Ms. Savage?
Can I just bring something in furtherance of what Dr. Metzl was saying? Can we get a written legal opinion as to if that comes to a vote on the, to rescind? As to who exactly can vote and how that has to work, rather than us all sitting here and having a discussion and not agreeing and then having to try to call attorneys? So I would think in advance, we have plenty of time, an advance written legal opinion as to who can vote and how that vote would work
Okay.
would benefit this board.
Who can vote on,
On the motion to,
around contracts, signing the contracts?
to rescind that vote. I'd like to know who can vote and who has that right. Where we have 3 members that weren't here but all took seats, do those votes actually get lost, or are we replacement members for those seats? Whereas we're now sitting for those people and finishing out their term. So I would like to know that and see that in writing from the SAU attorney,
Okay.
which would be Mr. O'Shaughnessy, correct?
Okay. Okay. I think you have their motion for a non-public. Mr. Farr?
Do it.
I'd like to enter a non-public under 91A:3, 2C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? The chair has noted previously, I don't believe it's appropriate at this time. I don't think that it's consistent with the court order. Any further discussion? Yep, Mr. Sherman?
Well, I'm concerned about that too. The Timberlane Board did request that. So I think we're showing good faith that we asked to have it added. It was a request. It's not a new request. It's an old request. You had it on that agenda. So I think we're showing our good faith that we were willing to continue with that agenda.
Okay.
And if I can just add on that, I think the court order specifically talked about the budget and not the auditor's report. And again, we just did the auditor's report, which was not on there as
And
well,
a lot
so.
of other things, so.
Right, and a lot of other things, so.
Kathy, if you would, please poll the board.
Mrs. Abbruzzese?
No.
Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
No.
Dr. Farah?
Yes.
Mrs. Lowe's?
Yes.
Mrs. Montgomery?
No.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Cornell? No. Mrs. Savage?
Yes.
Mrs. Sherman?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
No.
And Mrs. Yusenko?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed.
Please calculate that on a weighted vote as well.
You don't do that for non-public.
On
Oh,
non-public.
Can't do
excuse
that
me,
going
that's right.
into non-public.
So that motion does not pass. No other business to come before the board?
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Pass.
It did pass.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
7-6.
I think 7-7.
I apologize. Wrong way.
Pass 7-6.
Yep,
I
sorry.
think it's a majority.
I was like, wait a minute, did I hear that wrong?
Okay, we're going in non-public. Dean,